Tonight's first order of business, putting data to a problem many have long suspected. Regardless of what the stated employment numbers are, the quality of jobs in Canada may be on the decline, and that's not a new thing. With many more workers being forced into part-time work and self-employment, we have to ask, is the security of jobs lost forever? Welcome to The Exchange. A warning today from one of Canada's biggest banks. The stated jobs numbers we see may not be painting a very good picture of the actual jobs market. CIBC's Employment Quality Index shows the unemployment picture is worse than the headline unemployment rate indicates. The research shows unemployment quality is at a record low. The index is calculated by examining the types of work Canadians do. One of the factors is the distribution between full and part-time work. Using 1988 as a starting point, the number of part-time jobs created has significantly outpaced full-time positions. Another factor is how many are self-employed, work that is typically less stable. Self-employment growth has also easily outpaced paid employee growth. These two factors have pushed the index lower for years. By this measure, the quality of the job market is 15% below the rate seen in the early 1990s and 10% below a decade ago. Benjamin Tal is the author of the report and Deputy Chief Economist at CIBC World Markets, and he joins us now. Thanks for being with us, Benny. So let's start with the deterioration of the quality of jobs. I feel a little bit like this bears out what many Canadians have felt, which is that things don't feel as stable as they used to be. Can you tell me what you would attribute it to? Are there common themes that are driving this?
Yes, listen, no surprise here. Yes, it's better to have low quality employment than no job whatsoever, but the headline employment numbers exaggerate the real health of the Canadian labor market. Clearly, we are seeing a situation in which we are all excited about the number of jobs, but the real story is also the quality of jobs, what kind of jobs we are creating. And according to our measure, the trend has been downward over the past 25 years. This is not a cyclical story. This is not something that the Bank of Canada can fix tomorrow by cutting interest rates by 50 basis points. This is a structural story that is leading to this widening income gap in Canada.
So one of the things, of course, we know that's different about a full-time and a part-time job are the level of benefits and the amount of job security. On the benefit side, Benny, how do we capture what that's worth? In other words, the lost value or the transfer that used to occur between corporations and their employees, that's not happening now.
It's huge. It's huge. In terms of the stability, in terms of the benefits, it's not there. We are seeing a situation in which many people are being forced into part-time. We see self-employment rising at a rate we haven't seen in many years, and actually the trend over the past 20 years is very clear. Many of those people are young. They are forced into self-employment because they cannot find something else where they don't have the same benefits. You know, by the way, the likelihood of doing fine in self-employment is not very different if you chose to be self-employed or if you were forced into it. Regardless, from a quality perspective, it is a negative because they make 20% less than regular employees. So clearly, there is a major issue here. This is a trend, and we are losing from both directions, basically not only the compensation, but also the benefits and the stability of those jobs.
So you mentioned the whole income stagnation or disparity problem. What we know is that although people generally may be better off than they were 50 years ago, you know, at every income level, the truth is the middle class has stagnated. Is part of that because some of those supports, things like benefits or a company pension, have been removed?
That's definitely part of it. We are not measuring it in our index, but it's clearly a derivative of the findings, because what we are seeing is something very interesting. We are seeing more and more jobs being created at the low end of the scale, basically people that in jobs that are pay less, and we're seeing less and less people in high-paying jobs. What we are seeing also is very interesting, is that wage pressures are rising much faster in the high-paying jobs and much more slowly in the low-paying jobs. Basically, the gap is widening and widening. Why? Because we have this mismatch in the economy. Again, we have people without jobs and jobs without people. We don't have the skill set that the labor market needs, and that's why we have this deterioration in the quality of employment that leads to this widening in the income gap, and this is just the beginning. It's something that we have seen for a while now.
There's a whole bunch of factors that drive businesses to prefer more flexibility in their labor force. Part-time workers tend to be more flexible. Benny, would you, I'm going to take you a little bit beyond your economist role and ask you to speak on policy, but would you suggest that when we look at that problem, that the flexibility of part-time is good for business but maybe bad for employees, is there a policy prescriptive here that tries to say perhaps there should be more company pensions or there should be fewer part-time or some kind of regulation that keeps this from happening?
Well, first of all, let's establish that it is a structural story. It's not a cyclical story. Therefore, the Bank of Canada cannot fix it. That's a given. So what to do? I think really policy is the main issue here. But I'll go beyond that. I think that the main reason why we have this mismatch in the labor market is education. The education system is inconsistent with what we need. You see all those degrees, but they are really not what we need in the labor force. As I think we discussed in previous conversations, we are the most educated country in the OECD in terms of the number of people going to universities. But we are also the #1 country in terms of the number of educated people that live in poverty. Simply, we cannot translate those degrees into jobs, and that's why the quality of employment is going down. So educational reform is definitely a big thing. Colleges and universities can speak and meet and have basically a joint agenda to help those young kids. That's one way. Another is immigration. Definitely immigration policy is part of the solution. We cannot have a situation in which we have PhDs driving taxis. We know the story. And of course, we need corporate Canada to join the story here and basically provide more on-the-job training. So it's not just policies coming from the government. We are all in it.
All right, we've got to leave it there, Benny. It's a great subject. I know we'll talk again about it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.